The late Khan lost his life in December of last year. This follows an alleged domestic row during which it is alleged he sustained the deadly injuries.
He has made a decision to charge the respondent hearing. That they require the respondent to log in virtually before Justice Motende for her first appearance.
Meanwhile, the controversy surrounding the death of a Form 1 student at Chemasi Secondary School in Nandi County after allegedly being assaulted by teachers for cheating in an exam seems to have taken a new twist, with an interim medical report indicating that he could have died as a result of severe ulcers, pneumonia and a bacterial infection for which he was being treated. But as Gabriel Kudaka reports, the school management has insisted for an autopsy to be conducted to clear the suspicions surrounding the cause of his death. This even as the family calls for thorough investigations into the matter.
At the late Kelvin Kiptanui's home in Chepkimel village in Nandi County, friends and family members gather for his burial plans. The family too shocked to come to terms with the unfortunate incident and the mystery surrounding his death.
Ajabu ni moja tu yenye nilistukia, maana huyu mtoto alitoka hapa akienda shule kama yeye ni mzima.
Alikuwa mimi nasulukia mtoto yangu hiyo passport, yani nipeleke shule, baadaye anichunge.
Alichapa wanafunzi walikuwa wanafunzi wawili, kila mmoja dogo 8. Alafu mwalimu mmoja sana akatokea, yule mtoto yule mwingine wakachapwa anasikia 14, lakini huyu alichapwa mpaka akaanza sasa kujaribu kutoroka.
Kelvin died last Saturday at 11 in the morning while undergoing treatment at Nandi Hills Hospital, where he had been admitted on Friday, a day after being referred to the facility from Chepisese Dispensary. Doctors say he had been diagnosed with severe pneumonia, bacterial infection and acute peptic ulcers disease.
Hii mambo ya kuchapwa ndio ilitokea baada ya Kevin kuhaka, lakini kulingana na ripoti alihaka kwa sababu ya pihini nyingi kwa damu yake.
But the family would hear none of it. They read foul play in the incident.
Vile mtoto yangu aliamka kwenda shuleni, hakuwa mgonjwa.
The family of the late Kelvin Kiptanui insists that the deceased has never had any health complications. They are now calling for thorough investigations to unearth the cause of his death.
Mchunguze mashule hii. Kwanza mkubwa ya kuona mashule Chemasi hapa. Mchunguze kwa nini watoto napikwa sana. Na zaidi ya tumeona hii amekufa na wale wengine ambao wako huko.
The Board of Management of Chemasi Secondary School says an autopsy will have to be conducted to clear the suspicions surrounding the death.
We as a school will support that a postmortem be done so that the cause of death can be established.
The school was closed on Monday morning to prevent students from going on rampage. The body is at the Nandi Hills Hospital mortuary. Gabriel Kudaka, NTV.
And the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, has called for the disbanding of the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, stating that the task force has caused more confusion in the transition of the junior secondary school. The union now wants the government to revert a decision to domicile grade 7 students in primary schools, calling for a crisis meeting involving stakeholders to discuss the fate of junior secondary learning.
The Working Party has contributed more confusion than solutions in the JSS transition. The team's cardinal mistake was to deviate from the CBC implementation plan that had guided the new curriculum for 5 years without thinking through their recommendation. It is not too late for the government to domicile JSS in secondary schools, because the teachers were already in secondary school. Even if they were not enough, then posting the new employees there, like it has happened in primary schools, could have averted the crisis that we are seeing. It must now call for a common sense that building more classrooms in secondary schools, which already have laboratories, would have been more productive.
And a section of Ford Kenya leaders have castigated UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala for his sentiments, demanding that Speakers Moses Wetangula and Amason Kingi resign from their positions if they're not willing to fold their parties and join the ruling UDA party. The leaders have urged Malala not to be used to further vile agendas.
Jana mimi nimeshurutishwa sana kuona kwamba wewe kama katibu mkuu wa chama cha UDA unasimama katika TV za nchi hii, unaanza kuongea matamshi mabaya kuhusu speaker wa taifa la Kenya hii. Cleophas Malala bana, wewe ni rika yetu, tuheshimiane my friend. Usije kwanza kututishatisha bwana. Msemaji wa Mlembe ni mheshimiwa Speaker Moses Masika Wetangula.
And a fuel shortage looms in the country, with some major oil marketing companies facing serious cash flow challenges. They say has been triggered by the shortage of the dollar occasioned by the tough economic situation, as Martin Mwangi reports.
Kenyans and oil marketers have expressed their concerns over what appears to be a looming fuel shortage in the country. This has been brought about by a shortage of dollars, which the oil marketers use to purchase the commodity. A spot check by NTV at some of the petrol stations in Nairobi reveals that some marketers have run out of the unleaded and super petrol, hence consumers forced to buy alternatives.
This is the third petrol station that I've been. I'm looking for fuel, and it seems like here we are in Shell, and they are saying it's only V-Power which is there. So I just decided to fuel V-Power because I don't know where I can get the regular petroleum.
Hii ndio Shell ya pili nimepata hakuna mafuta. Ya previous nilikuwa Dagoretti Corner, haikuwa na, so only opt nikanunua kwa msee mwingine kwa petroli nyingine.
However, Petroleum Outlets Association of Kenya POAC has dismissed the fear, saying it is in consultation with the government to find a solution.
Some OMCs are unable to raise as much dollars as they would, so as to pay for as much fuel as they require to the suppliers once the fuel lands or docks in Mombasa. This is what probably is informing some issues in terms of running dry pumps, and we believe this is the issue that the government is trying to address in terms of government-to-government procurement, so that we can ease the pressure that the shilling is getting from the dollar.
Kenya's foreign exchange reserves have plunged to $6.6 billion, providing just 3.6 months of import cover against the prescribed floor of 4.3 months. Martin Mwangi, NTV.
And Nairobi County health officials have ruled out a possible cholera outbreak in Upper Hill Boys High School, that's in Nairobi County, following reports that 16 students were admitted to various hospitals in the city with diarrhea and vomiting. The officials say that so far 11 students have been admitted after being diagnosed with amoeba.
Relentlessly, these parents at Upper Hill Boys High School were ready to camp in the school compound to ascertain whether the children were okay. It is reported that at least 96 students were rushed to various health facilities after complaining of stomach upsets on Sunday, vomiting and having diarrhea. This then forced the health officials from the Nairobi County government to intervene and clarify the allegations in a bid to restore calm.
The issue about what the diagnosis was, our initial tests and what we have treated for has been amoebiasis. And so we are investigating what could have been the original cause or source of that infection. We, as the health department, have also taken samples to be able to culture for cholera. So we did rapid tests and they turned negative.
They are accusing the school administration of failing to effectively communicate the issue to the parents.
What the mode of transmission is from the fecal matter to the oral to the mouth. So essentially, it has something to do with hygiene, proper preparation of food, access to safe water, access to safe food. But then also not be too hard on the institution, whereas it's a serious issue. It's a serious issue that is affecting us as a country in terms of the adequacy of our public health measures.
So far, 11 students are currently admitted, 3 at Savannah Medical Hospital and 8 at South B Hospital. Helen Aura, NTV.
All right, thanks, Helen, for that. Well, it is time for us to now take a look at what's in the papers this morning. I'll be introducing my panelists in a moment here as they get mic'd. This is what we have on the very front page of the Daily Nation. Uhuru pushed me to sign off 15 billion shillings revelation, according to the Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, yesterday, who told members of Parliament how former Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani invoked former President Kenyatta's name numerous times to press her to approve questionable payments just 5 days to the August 9th general elections. That's on page 7 of the Daily Nation. We'll be having a very deep discussion on this matter in a moment, so I'm not going to get into that right now. Also, Matiang'i's 7 hours of drama at the DCI offices. What went wrong? Well, the former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i is set to be charged with conspiracy to commit a felony and uttering false information over the alleged police raid on his Karen home last month. So that's on page 5 of the Daily Nation. Let me get to some of those stories now inside here. And before that, move junior high to secondary schools. KUPPET is urging the ministry. The Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers wants the junior secondary schools to be taken back to secondary schools as earlier planned. The union, at the same time, calling for the disbandment of the Presidential Working Party on Education reforms, accusing it of causing confusion in the implementation of the JSS. You can see the gentleman there. One is the KUPPET Secretary General Akelo Mizori and the Chairman Omboko Milemba. And of course, they were just talking about this issue of the JSS and calling for a crisis meeting to resolve the issues surrounding the junior secondary school, saying that no learning is going on in schools since they open on the 30th of January. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on that development. Rally driver Maxine Wahome is also to face murder charges for boyfriend's death, and that story is there. The rally driver was arraigned actually yesterday on the murder charges over the death of Asad Khan, which happened last December. However, she did not take plea pending a mental assessment to ascertain whether she is fit to stand trial. All right, we're going to move forward to now a couple of the main stories here. Ruto's tough balancing act as Raila piles pressure with protest plan. We'll be having a deeper conversation here, but allow me to introduce my panelists who are already seated. Abdullahi Halas, political governance analyst, and Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst. Karibuni sana, very good morning to you. So, you know, very interesting. You know, yesterday was quite eventful. And some of the things that happened, one was along Kiambu Road, of course, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters. We're going to get to that in a moment, but I want us to take a look at this page, and we're going to have a deeper conversation on this. It's on the 4th page of the Daily Nation. That's Ruto's tough balancing act as Raila piles pressure with protest. Now, President William Ruto is facing that tough balancing act in implementing his administration's policies amid his a restive opposition determined to erode his legitimacy and make it difficult for him to govern. Yesterday, the opposition leader Raila Odinga had given the president a 14-day ultimatum that ends today. Among others, opened the election service and addressed the cost of living, raised the pressure as he dismissed a panel appointed to recruit new electoral commissioners. Let me begin with you, Abdullahi. So tonight by midnight, so that 14-day ultimatum, remember, that was issued by the Azimio team at the Jivanji Gardens about 2 weeks ago, expires today, midnight, Wednesday midnight. So we're going to, because they promised that we're going to see intense rallies and protests across different parts of the country, spearheaded by the Azimio chief Raila Odinga. Should the Kenya Kwanza government be worried?
Well, I think first of all, there is the right of Kenyan to picket. And when they say they want to do mass action or they want to protest, what do they mean? Do they want to get violent, or do they want to exercise their rights and put pressure on government? If it is exercising their constitutional right by assembling and picketing and, you know, airing their views, that is within their rights. But now, how will that augur well if they bring Nairobi to a standstill of a population of maybe 500,000 or 200,000? How is that going to augur well with investors? How is that going to augur well with the, you know, the current people struggling with the economy? I mean, so I think Kenya Kwanza should be worried in the sense that the impression this is going to create is not good for us as a country. But also, more importantly, they should not. But I think Raila also must also give us a break to some extent, because some of the problems we are grappling with were there when he was having handshake from 2018 with Uhuru Kenyatta, and he was very silent. And that time, I wrote on the Star then that why do you allow to have a handshake when 200 people have died? I mean, must you be in government for you to have peace in this country? I mean, is it pursuit of power or pursuit of change? I mean, so if he wants to use the current economical turmoil in terms of cost of living, those things were there when he was there. So it becomes sometimes very oxymoron of him. One time he was quiet for 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, almost 5 years. Then all of a sudden, 6 months after the transition, this government needs to settle. I mean, most of the things that they are grappling with, they need 18 to 2 years at least to settle. So I think they have the right to picket, but I don't think Kenyans, what will they gain if they ride the whole day and then they go home hungry? So I think Raila should, if this is the same trick he wants to use to Nusu Mkate with Kibaki.
But the Azimio team says that's not what they're angling for.
Well, that's what they were saying all through, even before he was protesting and saying there is never going to be this or that. All of a sudden, on March, we saw people in Harambee House with his daughter and Junet, and then we were told there is handshake. I mean, as a person of that level, I think he has tried 6 times. Is it must for
Do you
Raila
not
to be the
foresee a
president?
bigger picture that perhaps the Azimio team wants to achieve through this? But look, we're going to get into that conversation much deeper. But just very quick brief from Arnold. But before Arnold, we're also joined by Hesbon Owila, media and political communications analyst. Thank you so much, Hesbon, for joining us. Arnold, so this is what we are facing, at least by the clock of midnight tonight. That ultimatum that was issued by Azimio expires. So what do you think?
I still think that the problems that Azimio really wants to solve, or at least they claim they want to solve, will not be solved by mass action in the first place. It's, first of all, I don't know how to define mass action. Because whereas the Constitution at least is clear, it talks about picketing and everything else, I'd really love to know if that really is what defines mass action. That every time you have got an issue around here, for example, you as an employee of this particular institution, in that you do mass action within. So I don't know, there is need to actually probably ask them what really mass action entails. And those wordings are not in the Constitution. There's a reason why, for example, we have got Article 260 in the Constitution that interprets a number of terms. Otherwise, when we have got amorphous terms that could be used to mean anything, then I don't know exactly how we can even debate that
Maybe
openly.
pick from what we've seen earlier with some of their rallies that they've done in Kamukunji and different parts of the country, which was to just rally people to come and listen to some of the grievances that they hope to raise.
Well, we did that all through last year as we did our campaigns. I don't know whether we would call those campaigns or mass action, but be that as it may, I think it's something that if it were mass action, somebody said that from tonight there will be a revolution. Revolutions are not announced. I do not think there's a revolution that is coming. Whereas I look forward to see how the current government, specifically my focus is on this particular government, as opposed to those who are threatening to come and do mass action, how they handle it. Because for them now, this is a bigger call. We expect to see them handle these things as a government. They have promised to be different. What I am a little bit not so sure about this whole idea is that in the guise of mass action, in the guise of protests, we've always ended up with one thing, that 1997 there was an election that so many people didn't like. At the end of it, we saw an NDP and KANU merger. In 2007, of course, we will see the noises we had, over 1,300, at least the documented ones, 1,300 people died. We ended up with a handshake. In 2017, again, the noises that came with that. In 2018, we saw another handshake. And it wouldn't be a very good thing that we probably are headed the same direction. We cannot run a republic that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Hesbon. What at least you make from this?
Well, I think, you know, we cannot run away from the fact that all the other successive instances where we've had elections and post-election rank and acrimony and a truce between different parties, they have been very unique circumstances, and I don't think they are all similar. So you cannot have a common thread and blame the political class. There is always the public, and you know, you probably need to be alive to the fact that if there is any sort of demonstration, it is not about the political class. Are the people outside there expressing their dissent? And to what extent are politicians, you know, coming either to take control of the entire process or to take advantage of it? You know, the key thing about people coming out to protest is that when there is leadership, then you know that there is some sense of control, that it cannot run out of hand. But the germane question we may want to ask ourselves today is, do Kenyans have a reason to protest? You know, if not all Kenyans, do we have a sizable population that is, you know, in this situation where expressing their dissent, displeasure with their government, you know, is something that they need to do? Two critical things. One, whether we like it or not, when governments get into power, they suddenly lose popularity almost immediately. And if you look at the way this government campaigned, the lofty ambition that they had, the promises that they gave Kenyans, and the reality that we have today, you may want to ask yourself, was it better while we were waiting for this government to come to power? And if it was better while we were waiting, then there's that post-victory disillusionment. And that pushes people to the streets to demonstrate. And then number two, the cost of living. I mean, the cost of living has just gone way high for most Kenyans. And you can't blame Raila for that. You can't blame the government for that. You can only ask the government of the day to act on the cost of living. And if people are coming out to demonstrate, they're simply coming to express themselves so that the government does something for them. And I don't see any problem with that. My only issue is, given the tradition that we've had of past demonstrations, I want to believe that the government will take you know, the entire thing with the seriousness that it deserves, so that they protect lives and property. And the people who are demonstrating are allowed to demonstrate and express themselves in a peaceful and diligent manner.
All right, let's move forward. Matiang'i held at DCI offices for hours, so we saw that report a bit early on when we began the bulletin. But former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i is said to be charged with conspiracy to commit a felony and uttering false information over the alleged police raid on his current home last month. Matiang'i may again be summoned to the DCI headquarters to shed more light on the incident following what happened to be what appeared to be a failed attempt to do so yesterday during his over 7 hours stay at the Mazingira complex at the DCI headquarters. This is after Matiang'i declined to respond to questions asked by the detectives, which his lawyer said did not match the reasons for his summons. So like I said, Abdullahi, so that yesterday was quite eventful at the DCI headquarters. We saw a contingent of lawyers that accompanied Dr. Matiang'i, the former CS. I want to get your initial reactions to exactly, you know, some of the happenings around, you know, the investigations on what Matiang'i, what happened during the raid of Matiang'i's house, and also that the fact that he's going to be charged with conspiracy to commit a felony and uttering false information over that alleged police raid. Well, some of the people who accompanied him were politicians and lawyers said this is clear, simple witch hunt.
Well, I think, first of all, I'll look at it in three lenses. One is that what goes around comes around. Matiang'i was one time the interior minister. We know what happened to Miguna Miguna. We know what happened to the current deputy president. He was taken off his house with pants and into a boot of. So to that extent, I don't sympathize with him. The issue of charges, that is proven in a court of law. So the police have to charge him, take him to court. Then that is going to be dealt with at the courts, especially the High Court. The third one is the civil part of me that says this state or this country has gotten a new constitution, and there is a reason why Kenyans have suffered for it. Individuals have paid price to where we are today, because this was sometimes a very police state where people, remember not so far ago, immediately after independence, there was emergency in northern Kenya, people were camped and killed. So through that experience, we never wanted the state to have so much power and just do whatever it takes. So the state itself, I mean, there was intimidation, keeping them 9 hours. That I'm sure the senior government officials, whether it's the Ministry of Interior or guys at the deputy office of the deputy president, whether it's himself or the handlers, in one way or another, they were intimidating Matiang'i to that extent. So what is a country that wants to be a nation where the rule of law is very much the cornerstone for everything is? You call him, and then which he has a right to have lawyers. He goes there, and you tell him the charges, you read him his rights, then you go to court, you execute some of the things. But there is a lot of political innuendos and drama with it, of the humiliation part, and keeping him there. Matiang'i is a victim of his. When you are making laws, they say sometimes when I listened to Miguna, sometimes he was here with Dibale, and he used to say, when you're making laws, make sure you make them for your enemies, so that in case they find themselves in the leadership of that particular state, there is nothing much they can do to you. When you remember the security bill came up, I remember I was in court when Judge Odunga, Vincent Odunga, threw 8 clauses of those. So we should be a nation that believes in the rule of law. I do not want to focus more on the politics of it. It's a revenge, either by the office of the deputy president, because from...
So, because there have been actually, concerns and talks that what appears to be is that this could be payback.
Of course, every government, there is always people who are handling some of these things and in the shadows. Remember when we were here discussing about when Raila was sacked and he said he's going to step down, a few days he said Ruto sacked him. Government works in a very mysterious ways.
All right.
So I think what is happening to Matiang'i is what he did to others. What goes around comes around. If you misbehave in an office, those other come will misbehave. But what I think is, as a country, it's not healthy for us. It is not befitting. It's also a warning to those in the Kenya Kwanza government right now. I mean, the guys who have been complaining not so long ago last year are now bastardizing the media and having a lot of arrogance in office, so they easily forget. Yeah, it's a warning to current leaders also. Okay, so this is certainly something that is continuing to develop. Like we hear, Matiang'i is going to be summoned back. I want to get your thoughts, Arnold and Hesbon, in just a moment, but we have to take a quick break here on MLive on NTV. The hashtag we use, as always, is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Ismail, talk to us. We're back in a short while. We'll continue with this conversation and much more still in the dailies. Stay with us.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes, you sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year, angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women, where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As in any example, you actually mean that. Maifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema huyu jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Yes, ndio ukiwin, udive win si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
Leave! I'm going to call the police right now! Mr. Marcelo, please, what are you looking for? Oh my goodness, what do I do? Mr. Marcelo, please, you have to go, I beg you!
Hello?
What happened?
Hello? What?
Hello?
What happened?
Marcelo took Nicole away.
What?
He wants to take her out of the country.
Oh my goodness.
Daddy, please stop the
Keep quiet, Nicole. I said shut up and sit tight.
Mommy!
Nicole, I said shut up. Just keep quiet.
No!
It had to be you.
We tell stories, but the woman's voice, the woman's perspective is missing. And therefore, it was important that we create a gender desk that will give women and young girls a platform where their stories will be told. And so through our voice, as a Nation Media Group Gender Desk, then we are able also to influence the corporates and other organizations to come up with gender desks that will enable us to end up actually embracing the equity that we are celebrating this during this International Women's Day. We are living in a digital world. So digital means then everybody needs to be part of this digitalized world and benefit from it, this International Women's Day. Of course, I'll first celebrate my mom because she gave me life and she's a power woman, a strong woman, semi-literate but very, very strong woman. And she lives in the rural area. She lives in the village. And so, beyond that, I am celebrating the rural woman whose role in our economy, in our society is not really recognized. Just want to ask each one of us to take this chance to just embrace equity. Let's reconnect, let's love, let's educate, let's grow our country.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back. You're watching M Live on NTV. We're having a discussion around some of the developments in the country. Still focused on the paper here as we wind up. Matiang'i held at DCI offices for hours. Arnold, I'm going to get to you before we took that break. So, you know, the former CS found himself in quite an unfamiliar territory. I don't think that's something that he was used to while he was in power. But here we are. I want to get your initial thoughts on the developments on this matter.
Even before I respond to that, I just need to remind you that today is the International Women's Day.
Indeed.
A happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you very much.
The other women we have in our lives in the country. We celebrate you. And of course, it's important to say this, that women must learn one thing, that when it comes to power, no one gives you, you take it. The way they've done it in so many places, like the media house, even at home. All those people there who make noise and all the people who think that they have got a voice, they actually do it. So it's important that we mark out there because we are a country of bad manners. On an important day like this, we are talking about politics And we've got so much, including revolutions, mass action, and everything else. Now, for Matiang'i, there are so many things to say about it, but let's try chew what we can. First of all, it's important, and it's not just what we've said in the past, but it's a common phrase within the law-making world that when you are coming up with a law, ensure that you give it so strong ropes that even if the worst of your enemies were to wake up in the morning and they're in control, you'll still sleep. But that a lot of times doesn't work. And we've seen that happen time and again. I'll give you an example using this same issue. You know, there's this thing about the cybersecurity laws, the Act, Section 23. It's one that the former CS really used to crack down on a section of media, specifically bloggers. A lot of times, even though it's come short in court repeatedly, now the same law is actually being used against him. Sometimes when we do these things, let us always remember that somebody else could use them against us. Who knew that the same law that the larger than life Matiang'i used to actually bring down bloggers would be used against him? But be that as it may, it's also important to speak to Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza must grow up. You know, they are behaving like small boys. We know that they have got a problem with Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. Why are they dealing with smaller people like Matiang'i? Why can't they just bring it on instead of saying Mutu wa Maziwa, Mutu wa Gas and the others? Why can't they just be bold and deal with those two gentlemen? Because it looks like they've got a bone to chew with them. So going around with Matiang'i, everybody knows where I come from. They say that if something is knocking at the back end of your door, it's actually looking for you. It has no business with the walls, it's looking for you. So Matiang'i is part and parcel of the wall that then made Uhuru Kenyatta and of course Raila Odinga for the handshake. They actually need to grow up and just be men. Can they face them? We do not need to be in places where the deputy president is talking about, I will be releasing names. We have got institutions in this country. There is EACC, there is DCI. They are all manner of institutions. The same things that they were complaining about. And they swore during their swearing in that we will not go back to using, and the president has been on record quoted that we will not use the state agencies. We will not politicize them. What are they doing now? They are doing the same thing. So for Kenya Kwanza, it's important that they grow up, because somebody must be an adult in the house. We can't all be behaving like children. On the other side, the opposition is behaving like children. They are rolling on the floor, promising earthquake, everything, mass action and revolution. And the government on the other side is also throwing tantrums. So who grows up in this house called Kenya? Kenya Kwanza must grow up, because at least they have got the tab of leadership. But then, two things are happening here. That as they politicize state agencies, they actually are weakening their own government. And then they are harming state, and of course, eventually destroying the country, like he said earlier on. So this Matiang'i thing, the less I said about it, why I'm using the word grow up, is because this thing can be settled silently out there. Write to Matiang'i, let him show up at DCI, let him respond to those issues. There's too much drama about nothing. Because if it's about something about his property that the state finds fishy, like everybody else, he should be accountable. Why should they do so much drama about it? Right. Why would the DCI be behaving like they're taking orders from somewhere? A simple interrogation like, did you say these things or did you not say these things, should not take 8 hours, to a point where you're having the former prime minister showing up and then threats about storming into DCI. You know, things that border on the edge of the law. We don't want to get there.
All right. Yeah. I want to hear from Esbel, and then we move forward from this particular topic.
Well, I think if you look at what is happening, it's just unfortunate that we are drawn from the hardship of life, you know, the plight of so many Kenyans right now centers around the cost of living, food, and all that. But then you have a government that is very busy on razzmatazz. I mean, the former CS divides opinion. That is unequivocal. No one can deny that. But you also understand that he served this country with distinction. I think he was among the first set of cabinet secretaries that were appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto in their first term with red ties. You know, it was not a complete cabinet, but he was among them. And everywhere he has gone, I think he has served this country with distinction. And I know he's not going to be the first one to serve this country with distinction, neither is he going to be the last one. He's not going to be the first one to be in trouble for the things he did as a cabinet secretary, and neither is he going to be the last one. But as a country, we have a responsibility to treat everyone with decorum. You know, the Constitution in itself protects Matiang'i. And this is pure intimidation, holding a former cabinet secretary, irrespective of what he has done, for almost 8 hours. And then the cranks of the business is only 15 minutes, then you release him. What is that? I mean, if that is not intimidation, if that is not attracting the attention of the country on something that the government can do silently and execute the due process. Because at the end of the day, you know, the DCI is not going to charge Matiang'i. The DCI is supposed to do investigation. Forward, you know, the file to the Director of Public Prosecution. It is the director who decides whether he's charged. But in the court of public opinion, what they are doing, they are essentially reminding Kenyans why the former President Uhuru Kenyatta was telling us every day that I know what is good for this country. This team is a team of very vindictive individuals.
But isn't this almost the same thing that happened?
The same actually.
Who?
Uhuru Kenyatta was doing the same things these guys are doing.
And you see, let me
so
tell you.
Why would he warn us against himself?
No. Let's just be clear. If Uhuru Kenyatta was doing the same things, was Raila Odinga not fighting the likes of Matiang'i when they were doing the same thing? You know, right is right, and it can never be wrong irrespective of who is executing whatever they're executing. If this team campaigned on having independent institutions that will not take orders from anyone, what we are seeing is far from independent institutions. What we are seeing is actually a silent continuation of what was happening, of course, with ferocity that has some element of anger in it and revenge, which is not right. You know, most people would want to dedicate their intelligence in serving the nation. But when some of these things are happening, it doesn't matter what Matiang'i has done. We don't need to see all this. We don't need statements from the political class. He's a Kenyan, yes, but he should be treated as a Kenyan. The way he's treated, by the way, does not look like he's a Kenyan who deserves some respect. He didn't have to go to the DCI. They can actually summon him. He goes without all this drama. But be it as it may, you know, at the end of the day, let us just remind ourselves what the current Interior CS said. One day, he will also be out of office.
Let's move forward from this particular topic, and let's see what else we have. Drop in PACS hits MCA's pockets. The take-home pay for members of county assemblies saw a drastic cut in the 6 months to December of 2022 as their sitting allowances reduced by more than half compared to a similar period in the previous year. In at least 6 counties, MCAs pocketed less than 10,000 in monthly sitting allowances, an indication of the tough times they went through as they had little to do in committee sittings, the avenue through which they actually earn the allowances. For example, in Lamu County, each of the 19 MCAs earned an average of 1,614 per month in sitting allowance for 6 months, according to the latest data by the Controller of Budget report on the county government's budget implementation. This translates to about 9,000 as the total amount earned by each MCA in the period. And it goes on to just give you an idea of how that has gone on in a number of the other counties as well. So let's see what else we have here. Uhuru pressured me to sign off on the 15 billion payment. That's according to the budget boss. And it says former President Uhuru Kenyatta's name was dragged into an investigation into questionable payments after the Controller of Budget told MPs she was pressured to authorize the release of the 15.2 billion 5 days to the August 9th general election. Dr. Margaret Nyakango recounted before a parliamentary committee how the then National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani invoked the president's name numerous times to press her to approve the payments. This includes 6 billion to cater for the exit of Helios Investment Partners and another 9.2 billion from the annuity fund to finance some road projects she said did not qualify to benefit from the kitty. Now, this happened as she was testifying before the National Assembly Public Petitions Committee that was probably in claims by COFEC Secretary General Stephen Mutoro. Now, let's just get into our conversation this morning. And this particular story sets the base for us to begin our conversation. And of course, it's all about accountability and the state of corruption. We're going back to the previous administration. And yesterday, we do have the lady, which is Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, making those kind of revelations before that parliamentary committee. I'll begin with you, Abdullahi. I want to get your thoughts, first of all, on some of these revelations that has now inducted, just brought into the picture the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, as well as his Cabinet Minister for National Treasury, that's Ukur Yatani. What did you make of some of these revelations yesterday? Let's get into that conversation.
I think you will just understand the utter shame, lack of shame and impunity in this country. And I have met Madam Margaret in his office when I complained about Mandera County government. And when we got the correspondence, I came to discover that she is either incompetent or she is compromised by these big offices, whether it's in the county or in the national government. Now, I think she needs to realize that her office is the only two independent offices, Controller of Budget and Auditor General, that she's very independent, meaning she does not need to take instructions from anyone apart from the law. In other statutory laws, we have the Constitution and other statutory laws. Now, if you look at Article 251, in other articles that deal with financial controls or discipline in this country, whether it's Article 228, 229, 230, 231, Central Bank, Remuneration, Auditor General, Control of Budget. I think if she was decent and Kenya had a disciplined, what we call administrative discipline, she would have resigned, because she sounded as if 15 billion is a change from 1,000. 17 billion on these, 25 billion on maize subsidy, another 50, that is...
But she says she was put under duress when it came to...
Did she tell Kenyans? I mean, she's answerable to Kenyans, we the people. She did not complain, she's talking of I was under duress. This is not a relationship. This is an office where you have a mandate. You applied for a job, Kenyans gave you, I think her tenure is 8 years non-renewable. So we are paying her. I was in her office, she has all these, capacity in terms of officers. And one of the things that is going to happen right now is, I spoke to a lawyer yesterday, whether this is amounting to remove her from office. I mean, how do you just sign, I was under duress from the president and the cabinet secretary, and then you just sign off 15 billion, when you are the person who was supposed to be helping Kenyans have financial physical discipline. So I think it is absolutely embarrassing to hear that a big office like her office has just released 15 billion. The president of this country is a person who is in the executive. She doesn't report to him. If she felt her life was threatened, she did not tell us Kenyans. Kenyans will have protected her. We have courts, we have institutions, we have parliament, she will have reported. I mean, there are many ways we all work. I mean, she will have whistleblown through her office to the media. If that information was released anonymously to NTV or Citizen, it will have been covered and put pressure on the executive to spawn, to stop stealing from us. So she did nothing. Now she's coming and telling us, after we've lost the money, and then, I was forced. Why was she quiet all this time? Why didn't you know this from the day she signed the money and give it to the media and leak it to the media through her office? I mean, so I think it is utter embarrassing to us as Kenyans if the public officers we have entrusted with our resources, she's paid a lot of money. She travels a lot, all taken care of by the people of Kenya. We the people are funding her, and then she's coming to us in front of, and she was even not embarrassed about it. She was just, duress, stress. This is not a relationship where there's a boyfriend, girlfriend, you joke about, dinner, or you have not been taken to roses in city market where I didn't buy you a flower and then you're angry. No, 15 billion. That is 2 billion more than the budget of Mandera County. We are receiving 13 billion this year. That is 2 billion more than the budget of 1 million Kenyans. recurrent and development. And then you're coming here as if it's a change from your ATM. So I think this will amount. I've already taken with my lawyer. We are petitioning Parliament to start the process of questioning her integrity and even competence to hold that office.
Okay.
So I think it's an embarrassment.
Let's hear from Arnold. When you're looking at this, I don't know if you managed to look at that exchange between the control of budget, allegedly, you know, the exchange, the WhatsApp conversation. But she says that she was forced, her hands were tied when she was told the president will call you or, you know, you must release these funds within 26 minutes or thereabout.
First of all, I just need to build up from where he's left. And I think Kenyans have got a very poor record in defending whistleblowers. We should also be honest enough that as a nation, we've let down people who stood on the line for us as a people. We still have got Munyakei down there. Kenyans, we as a people would really love people who come out and speak. But a lot of times we start blaming them and then, of course, putting them on trial. I think, how is the COB structured? How is that control of budget office structured? Does she have the power, for example, to refuse some of these payments? Because literally, what does she do? Is she doing the balancing act? Is she really that particular person who decides who to pay and what not to pay?
Well, according to the Constitution, she approves withdrawal of cash from the government's main account and also has powers to block access to funds on, you know, suspicion. Withdrawals are
on suspicion.
Lawful, yes.
So first of all, you must also realize that we have got this particular tool called the budget. Our budget is legislated. It is there for law, and that no one can actually do anything outside of that particular law. So let's start from this particular end, that our corruption, just like the budget itself, is also budgeted. Ours is a budgeted corruption where this money was already in the system and in the pipeline for that particular purpose. She's actually highlighting this. All of us know that there's much more money that has gone to play than the 15 billion shillings she's talking about. But she's actually talking about the timings at that particular time, or that particular period, and that she finds that this outrightly, she raises those particular notes and issues every single day. Like he has said, if you really have followed her engagement with the public entities, she raises such like issues with county governments, but then we will be out there. She's refused to release money. We have got pending bills and such and such and such. So what she said yesterday for me is not new. She's said these things repeatedly. Honestly, if we are people who keep record, she's raised such like things. But that's why I actually wanted to understand. Does she have, how is that office structured in a way? Does she have that absolute power to stop? You know, name dropping in government is so common. You know, powers from above. So somebody will actually be telling you here, people from above are actually saying that you do this and you do this. Sometimes you do not have a way of actually confirming. Would you call the president and ask him if it is necessary? And it's so bad, by the way, that sometimes people have to lobby for payments to be done. You know, that is one thing that really happens around Treasury. And now we also realize that even as business people lobby for their payments, contractors who've worked and suppliers who've done, as they go around Treasury lobbying, they imagine that the CS also goes around lobbying for some specific payments. So, as she has highlighted this, does she have control to know where that money has gone, what it's supposed to be doing? So 55 billion shillings spent outside of parliamentary approval. That in and of itself is quite a problem. Even though we have got a window where once in a while, and this thing called supplementary budget, regularizing expenditures outside of what is already done is something that states or other governments should be using with a little bit of caution. That's what has actually been abused, that provision about supplementary budget, that we can do something, the provision that we can do something and then regularize later on. That is where the problem is. So, be that as it may, I think she's done well to actually speak at the beginning of this particular government. If we do away with her, we will simply be helping this particular government so that then they can bring in a compliant COB when their time to play game starts. She's simply communicating that I will not be taking this. If we really are honest about this, this is what happened last time. And there is nothing that happened that people didn't know, because already her being in parliament is somebody having gone there to actually do what? To petition to ask about 55 billion shillings that was used outside of the parliamentary approval. So our budget is not a hidden thing. it's actually an open process.
Well, don't you feel that if in the beginning that, you know, when she felt threatened and this happened, it took time for her to come out and allay these fears and talk about, you know, and reveal some of these incidences? Wouldn't that perhaps, if an incident like that happened again, you know, in this government, don't you think if she was threatened to do something like that, she will, you know?
Of course, it's easy to actually say that if she paid the 15 billion under duress, how are we sure that she's also not under duress to confess about it in Parliament? So if she works under duress, she probably was under duress when she paid the 15 billion. She's also under duress even as she says this. So that is also possible. It's a way of looking at it. But this is what I'm actually trying to say, that her office and Treasury need to synchronize how they work. There's too much lobbying around Treasury, and now we also realize that even government lobbies her office to ensure that some payments go through. That is how you actually invite corruption. If she has to be lobbied to do her work, then there is a problem around that. Two, if it's true that the last administration spent money, and all of us know that if they were looking for 15 billion or money to that extent during that particular time, we all know that they were looking for campaign money. So are we also able to go back and look into how, if we are not able to, you see, if we are going to ask the Uhuru administration how they behaved, and then people like Owila and of course myself and the others are saying, okay, that is vengeance and everything else. What then stops William Ruto from doing the same in 2027 and 2026? So it's important to also look back. All of us know what that money was supposed to. You don't. Let's not look at that. At least for us who are practicing politicians, we will know that at that particular point, that money was supposed to get to campaigns. And then during that particular time, it also invites then the looters, as you bring in huge amounts for campaign, other people cut it away and carry it in boxes and take it home. So there was a purpose that money was supposed to play. And robbery, let me just finish on this. That people who deal with crime will tell you that every time somebody goes to a robbery, they need that money urgently. That money has got something it's supposed to serve. So if the state was so desperate for that money at that particular point, to the point where they were robbing the coffers, they honestly had something to do. And that's why I'm actually saying that all of us know what it was supposed to do.
All right. Hesbon, I want to get, first of all, your initial reaction to the proceedings yesterday in Parliament. I don't know if you also managed to get an opportunity to take a look at that alleged conversation between the Controller of Budget and the former Cabinet Secretary with regard to the release of these funds. What do you make of it?
Well, I think when you read this, what happens is that you realize that there's a lot that is not coming out, even from the text messages, and even from what the Controller of Budget is saying. Because naturally, what happens in the entire budgeting process, whether in government or in institutions, is that the person in charge of budgets just ensures that everything that is paid for was actually budgeted for, and their funds. So that is the first question we need to ask ourselves. That all these payments that she was being pushed to make or to approve, were they budgeted for without the approval of Parliament? And if Parliament had not approved, which means these were outside the approved budget by Parliament, is she protected enough to do the right thing? And therefore, without even looking at the names that she's invoking, I think we need to ask ourselves, this office is protected. And like in any other democracy, you know, whether liberal or populist democracy, one of the key things is the public gives power to a team of governors who run the state. And the only recourse that the public have is the law. That the law is such that the public is protected from errant governors of the state. So the law already protects this office, and she has security of tenure. So there is no reason why she should be telling us that she was an accomplice to an illegal, you know, entry into the public coffers and money was taken.
Do you find it a coincidence that this comes just a couple of days, just over the weekend? We had the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, saying that he said he vowed to name top officials in former President Uhuru Kenyatta's government who allegedly withdrew 24 billion from Treasury in the final days of Uhuru's administration. So these are the statements that he made over the weekend, and then, you know, a couple of days later we see some of these things being revealed. And
you see, that's the most unfortunate situation, that we live in a country where we are you know, directed by the political logic, that some of these things are coming courtesy of political statements. So whether there is a relationship or not, you know, that is the perception that people have, that she had a reason to disclose some of these things. She had a reason to go quiet on Ukur Yatani. She had a reason not to authorize these payments if they were illegal payments. The fact that she authorized these payments should further be investigated. Were they payments that were supposed to be done? Did she contravene the law? Was she in a position to say no and get the protection of the law? The answer is yes. And she decided that I'm going to operate via what now she claims. What threat? I mean, how sure are we that even the things that she's saying right now are not because of threats? Especially coming hot on the heels of what the deputy president said. And I mean, if you ask me, the first thing that some of these guys should do is to be pricked by their conscience and just leave office, one, so that even them, they're investigated from a very clean slate. Because this is tantamount to character assassination, first of all, you know, of individuals whose names they've invoked here. Number two, this speaks of very political, you know, expedient way of dealing with things. I agree with Arnold that it could be a way of telling the political class that, you know what, this used to happen in the past regime. Going forward, this should not happen. But it is difficult to buy that. If it was happening, why is she disclosing it right now? We live in a constitutional dispensation where her office is protected. And you see, it's consistent. It's what the DPP is saying, that I was forced to prosecute certain cases. And you ask yourself, Kenyans did not promulgate the 2010 constitution to protect these constitutional offices for individuals to still act at the behest of elected individuals. The reason why we give power to elected individuals is because the law protects us from these errant individuals. And we can't have state officers talk about 50 billion, 24 billion, as if it is loose change. It is not. I mean, this is money that run a number of counties in this country. And it is not even a question of invoking names. It is a question of to what extent can we investigate, go deeper, and how can these individuals just respect their conscience and step aside so that we get to the root of all this and hold people accountable.
Okay. Abdullahi, when you're talking about the issue of accountability, so these are revelations that have been made, and this is not little change for the country in a situation where the cost of living is certainly something that has created quite a huge debate in the country, and of course is hitting Kenyans quite hard, among other issues. So when you're talking about accountability and some of these things that have been made public, where do we go from now?
Well, I think, first of all, this is what I will call capricious political awareness. I mean, where our cultural propensity is one that always, you know, we make headlines and then what happened? You remember the life audit thing that came? I mean, so I think it has to do with the characters in these offices. I remember back in high school, when I was in school, they used to have what they used to call top layers. Top layers, I became a head boy both in Mandela Secondary School and Wajir High School. Top layers was only for prefects, where the cook and the prefect, especially the head boy, will conspire. They will have most of the oil, most of the beans, most of the meat, most of the bananas.
As head boy, is that what you did?
No, I didn't. That's what I'm coming to. When I came to as a Form 3, we changed everything, and then we said even Form 1s can be number 1 because there was always Form 4, Form 4, Form 4. Now, that brought backlash in me, where people started fighting me, pouring water on my desk, pouring water on my mattress. When you want to bring change, I like taking the examples of people like David Maraga and Vincent John Jodunga. These are judges, or rather guys in the judiciary, who have made a name for themselves. Ngugi Mumbi, you know, Isaac Leona. Why are they more different? I was in court yesterday defending a case myself. I appeared in person. Now, the character of an individual will either shape or break that office. Because if you know this is a public office, that lady is paid. I have a lot of respect for her because she's a friend. She's paid a lot of money. She's overseeing a whole of 9th floor and 12th floor of Bima House with the array of activities, and the number of documents you will see is that. So I think There's a lot we are not saying, as my colleagues have alluded to. Dropping the names of Yatani and the president right now when they cannot protect themselves is a bit uncouth by itself. I mean, why don't we bring even Yatani? We summon him, he was a public official. I think in the next 14, 15 years, he can still be held accountable for his actions. The president himself, Uhuru Kenyatta, today can be taken to court. He's now a civilian. He's no longer there. He doesn't have the tenure when he was in presidency. What does this say now, the individuals we take to offices? If we, the people of this country, want to make sure that the people we elected and the people those that they have appointed and those we employed who were paying them hefty of money even when our economy is struggling, we need accountability from those guys that they protect our monies, whether it's a county governor, whether it's a cabinet secretary. I hang around some of the people who are in the power brokerage, whether it's around Parliament or Kilimani area or Karen, you will be wondering the number of projects people are lobbying for. 1 billion, 2 billion. So it's like we have turned the state into a business enterprise where the systems are not working for us. There is a guy who has complained about a procurement by Kenha. He quoted 661 million. They gave it to someone who quoted 678. I mean, you look at, because they are kickbacks. And then the guy, when he complained against him, he's saying, I will give you 50 million, leave me alone to do the job. We have turned the state into an enterprise where you're always into tendering and brokerages, and no, that is not, systems must work. Look at the Auditor General's office. There is a report. When there is a report, but I think it's Article 219 talking about, immediately the Auditor General releases a report. 3 months after that, Kenya National Parliament and the county assemblies are supposed to debate. If there is the financial queries against Mandera County, it is the duties of the County Assembly of Mandera to pick that and then table it and then write to those departments. In Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, none has been tabled in the last 10 years.
So there's an issue?
There is an issue of the quality.
Is it a systemic issue?
Is it? It is. Because you've been complaining, people have been complaining about allowance with MCS. In Mandera County, we have 48 or 49 MCS. Those who come to the floor of the House in the County Assembly to articulate issues are not more than 9 or 10. So I was reading in Kisumu sometimes, the first or second assembly, 16 members of the County Assembly never spoke a word.
Okay.
So we have issues that are what we call misgovernance of the country, where our culture, our political norms is so toxic and materialistic and elite-led that what will have made this country prosper is administrative discipline and fiscal discipline, where our finances are prudently managed. Okay. But the guys who are managing are telling you that I was under duress, 15 billion has gone, another 17 billion has gone. Billions are becoming just like change we carry in the pocket. Okay,
Arnold, do we lack that accountability discipline when we're looking at public funds and the prudent use of public resources?
You know, Zainab, why we are going to have, why we keep on having these conversations. When we were kids in early 2000, people were having similar conversations about physical discipline, corruption, and issues that today we sit here and address. I'd like us to flip it and look at it from a statecraft perspective. Statecraft is difficult. This thing called government, government, governance, whatever it is a very difficult discipline to actually carry through. Whereas it's so easy for us to sit here and think that just because laws are written, laws and regulations and conventions, and then people are not adhering to them. You know, if somebody told you that the president will be calling you, it takes much more than just adhering to the law and knowing exactly what they're talking about. I also think that Pamela is, the COB is a disciplined person and that she's not released much more. I do not think that whatever she's speaking, or rather whatever she made public in the document she took to Parliament, that is just the tip of the iceberg. She probably has received calls in the past, and that no one has stopped Ukur Yatani, for example, for appearing before the parliament. He can actually, wherever he is, will say, I can come in and say that. Was that the first time payment has been pushed through? Also, can we get the question that occasioned that answer? Because context is king. There is something that happens before text, the text itself, and then, as in pretext, text, and then post-text, right? So, what is this question by the committee that occasioned the answer? That way, then we understand the context in which she was actually saying that. So, for example, if people were asking why payments were being made a few days to the election or slightly after election, a period when government automatically should be shut, at least from putting out a lot of money, then probably that's why that came out. And then when people ask you, why did you do this? There is a minister whom you are working with because there's the interdependence or the codependence between institutions. So can we look at this thing from a statecraft perspective? Because if you're going to look at it from the black and white of law, you are not going to have this actually sorted out. This thing we call physical discipline, it's so easy to write and talk about it until you are that particular person. I think I've given this example before. Once upon a time, when I was at the National Youth Council, elected in Nairobi to represent the Nairobi young people at the National Youth Council, NYC is a statutory agency. We went to see the president. When President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he actually had just been elected in the office, so he met us and he wanted to understand the challenges we had. We didn't have a budget. We were a new state agency. The budget lines and everything hadn't been worked out. So this is what the president told us, to cut the whole story short. We will give you 300 million shillings for your budget so that then you can roll out programs for young people and stuff. So that, after that, we left State House very happy and everything else. We were young people, still idealistic. We didn't ask a lot of questions. So when we went to Treasury, we were asked this: have you read the Constitution? What does it say about the presidential orders? It has to be written and it actually has to have a seal. Okay, even if he had done that, from where I sit, I don't want to name the person who was telling us that, who was telling me that. He told me, I'll work with you this afternoon so that you see how government is run. And he told me, this is a cabinet secretary, he's looking for 1.8 billion. This one is a cabinet. Bring that file, who is there? So I went through the whole afternoon with him, and then he told me, first of all, the president might not have told you, might not have been in a position to tell you no. But you already were there and he had to manage you. So he tells, and we had the Minister for Finance there, Rotich then. Our CS, Anne Waiguru, was with us there. And the president said in his own words, Anna, usiende London kabla mumalize hapa na Rotich. Nyinyi mtapatiwa 300 million ya budget yenyu. But when I went to Treasury, the guy who was, I don't want to name him because name dropping has become a bad thing. A few young people also know that. Yes, I've spoken about. So he told me, well, I'm saying that because they were in the meeting. A number of them were there. Murkomen was there. As in, all those guys were in that meeting. It was a public meeting. You can find it even online. So when we went to Treasury, the guy I was to see in the budget office told me, I want you to work with me here in the afternoon. Number one, you don't have any written thing. I heard you guys were in State House. I heard that particular communication, but it is not written. It has no seal. Number two, even if I were to get you 300 million, you know the budget cycle. Where do I get this 300 million? Show me. If the president points to me that this is where you get the 300 million, I'll get that money and give to you. So this is how it works. And then I started taking statecraft seriously. When I went to state corporations training at the Kenya School of Government and the others, I took understanding governments much more serious. All right. Because it's easy for us to actually blame the COB here, unless you've sat in that particular office. Because there are two people, by the way, you really need to, you cannot be them. The COB, for example, sometimes you have got little money coming in the name of the exchequer from what KRA has collected, gone to CBK. Now you are balancing. And
but by balancing that act, she is suddenly the gatekeeper of, and she holds the power to either allow or deny access to some of these funds, right?
Can I qualify that? Can I qualify whatever I was telling you?
Very quickly, then we need to
So in that particular office, again, in that office seated there, he told me, that gentleman who was there, he was just an acting guy then, and he told me, you know, when I am seated here, I get money after every 2 weeks from CBK that Treasury has collected, the availability of the exchequer. So how do I deal with that? And he told me that every day there are young people here, there are children. We have got international obligations to pay for some of these things that we think are free. You know, those vaccines children get and everything else, they've got an agreement. say that those are our priorities. We have to secure our airspace. We are paying for young people. And when he told me everything that he has to do, you realize that the people who sit in that particular office almost juggle like magicians. It's the same way I'm actually looking at the president today, having everybody wanting a slot, and he's not able to give. So can we understand the controller of budget? Can we look at this much more beyond the academic perspective? And you know, it's so easy for us to sit here, and I'll tell you 100%. If you've worked in government before, especially at policy level, it's not as black and white as we really want to put it.
Well,
so
we
can
had that
actually,
yesterday as well, not black and white. But
it's
look,
not that
we'll
easy.
come back and continue with this conversation. I'll give Hesbon an opportunity as well. But we have to take a break, Hesbon. Really. But when we come back, you'll be telling us, at least, you know, when you're looking at these independent institutions, who holds them to account? Because they're the ones who are also, you know, looking at the government's accounts. So who holds them to account? All right, so let's take a very quick break. AM Live on NTV. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us.
With Glovo, you have the city in your hands. Unatamani chakula different? Order Glovo ujaribu restaurant mpya. Diapers zimeisha? Order Glovo and save the day. Download the app and order anything you want.
As the Cabinet Secretary in this docket, I am promoting gender equity, starting with the ministry itself by encouraging women to step up, hone their skills, be confident, be competent, and make a difference. I look forward to coming up with programs that will promote women socially, economically, so that they can make their lives easier as we participate in resilience building. In this year's International Women's Day, I look forward to celebrating all the milestones we have achieved as a country in regard to gender parity. I am celebrating the great women who have held my hands, cheered me on, mentored me, coached me up to this level. I am also celebrating the women who have looked upon me, trusted me to be their mentor, and I embrace equity.
Winning the Carabao Cup might be a precursor to more and greater success for Manchester United. Then again, that has been the thought and expectation previously, only for disappointment rather than celebrations to follow. But this time, maybe it will be different for United, and what feels like the beginning of something good under Erik ten Hag.
Shield your families from germs. When Dettol is a part of every household bucket, then you and your family can stay protected from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Everyday use of Dettol keeps my loved ones protected.
God has been faithful and gracious to each one of us, and I believe we all have a testimony.
I'm highly favored.
What is your testimony? Join us this week on Crossover as we hear David Wanda's testimony alongside an incredible man of God.
Yes, tutakuwa pia na dancers bomba sana na kijani muziki niachie mimi.
So be sure to make a date with us this Sunday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV.
poa kuwa na rafiki kama Yesu.
Na hii ndiyo crossover.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV as we have a look at some of the developments in the country, at least with regard to the politics and the issue of governance as well. I was getting to Hesbon Owila here, and Hesbon, as we just conclude the matter on the revelations yesterday by the Controller of Budget, I want to get your take on the independent institutions in Kenya and the issue of accountability in terms of the prudent use of public resources in this country. Do you think that these independent institutions have been politicized to an extent that they're not able to take, to just do their jobs as they're supposed to be, as aligned in the Constitution?
Well, I wouldn't say that the institutions have been politicized. But I think there is a big problem with the individuals that we put in these institutions, and even the process of getting them at the helm of these institutions. I mean, we can't question their qualifications. They are qualified. These are very competent Kenyans, with the drive to serve this country. But I think sometimes the process in which they are gotten into office in itself puts them in a situation where they are easy to manipulate, And that is what we've seen consistently. Once a regime gets out, a lot of statements are made to endear themselves to the new regime, and you ask yourself, is this necessary? This is a completely independent institution. They don't have to endear themselves to the elected leaders because the public can deal with the elected leaders. But be it as it may, I think, how do we hold these institutions accountable? Because Parliament, the presidency, senators, governors, we hold them accountable through a constitutional term limit. We can actually get them out of office. These individuals have security of tenure. And the only way to know whether these individuals are serving the interest of Kenyans, because when you read things like authorized payments of billions of shillings, which in quote is said to be illegal, you ask yourself, why would an individual who is protected by the law to be in office, to do the right thing for Kenyans, come out and say that whatever they did was not in the interest of Kenyans and is actually illegal? So how do we hold these individuals accountable? And I think there are two critical questions, because these individuals respond to Parliament directly. And there are so many reports, like my co-panelists have said, that have been tabled have been presented by the Controller of Budget, the Auditor General, and they've never been discussed robustly. I think there's a fourth estate in any democracy called the media. That sometimes it is important for the media to help the public understand the powers that these officers have, the security of tenure that they enjoy, and the roles that they need to protect the resources of Kenyans. So to a large extent, these individuals have not been held robustly accountable in the eyes of the people. And I think that is something that we may want to put at the doorstep of the media and Parliament. But, looking at this, because Arnold also alluded to the fact that outside the lenses of the law, there's a bigger story to this. This is the political story that I see in this. We have a new government that promised a lot of things, and things are not working out. And it will take some time for things to work out, to fix this nation, to have the cost of living come back to a comfortable space where people can comfortably go and buy unga in the supermarkets. Because as it is right now, unga is going bad because people can't afford it, And some people keep asking, kwani Biblia ilienda juu ikakataa kurudi chini? Now the fact that we are facing high cost of living and all that means that because of the politics of this country, they have to find a way of helping people understand that the situation that we are in today is because of the past regime. And this is it. They're trying to make it look like there was serious damage in this economy that it will take them ages to fix. But the reality is, there is a high likelihood that these guys have no idea how they are going to fix some of these things in the near future.
But
so they will drop names, they will put allegations that are neither here nor there, they will put things, and I'm sure this story will die. If Parliament was serious about this thing, they should follow it up. Kenya Kwanza has numbers in Parliament. I mean, we should see this thing followed up to the end. But because it is politics, it is another smokescreen that is going to be floated outside there to deceive Kenyans that when the past regime was leaving power, they just damaged everything. It will take us years. I mean, billions, you know, billions
but
in Kenya have...
At the end of it all, Hesbon, just to look at, for example, the star talks about, on the second page, 15 billion spent on Uhuru's final year, which cannot be traced according to the Auditor General, Nancy Gathungu. We must certainly also put to account the previous administration, correct?
You know, let me tell you, you know, when you say 15 billion, you know, Kenyans are so used to the word billions, and Kenyans are tenderpreneurs. You know, the government is looked at as a cash cow for brokerage, for tendering, and for making money, you know. So a billion may not sound like a lot of money to so many people, but 15 billion is such a big amount of money. But I can tell you, without any fear of contradiction, it is a big amount of money, but it is not the amount of money that is making the cost of unga remain up there, and the Bible is still up. It is not. This is just a narrative that is taking us away from the real issues that this government is supposed to be solving. The real issues that they're supposed to be solving are to address the runaway cost of living. The real issues that they're supposed to be solving is to ensure that the hustler fund that they're giving people graduate. My friend, there are people who qualified for 400. It has never moved. They've been borrowing 400 and it is not moving. So, and we are running away from the reality.
Okay,
if that money was supposed to change the lives of Kenyans, let us focus on the things that they promise Kenyans, not the little issues of dropping names here and then reminding Kenyans that someone, you know, damaged this economy so bad that it will take us ages to fix. They have no idea.
Okay, so we have Arnold and Abdullah.
I just needed to remind him, now that we're in the spirit of reminding each other, when we started the show, Hesbon here said that the things that Azimio is trying to go to the streets for are not new. They didn't come here during this particular administration. They were there even then. So even as he says that the last administration did not hurt our economy, I just need to remind him that while we had subsidy money, a bit of what we actually are now looking into, the unga was actually high, 230 and above. Now we have removed those subsidies. We are blaming this particular administration, but unga is lower. So it's also a fact from your own deducement that it's true, the handshake did hurt our economy. I just needed to remind him that from his own statements earlier and now, and using, if logic is actually an issue, if it's going to be applied here.
To disagree with
he could disagree.
The statement he's attributing to me was made by the other panelists, not me.
Okay, so you finish, then we have Abdullah.
So I just needed to say this, that the handshake really hurt this country. We cannot run away from that. It's true that money was stolen. We cannot stop looking into the money that was stolen. Here are actually people that are working. And this is why we've actually said repeatedly that Parliament needs to strengthen the Office of the Auditor General and now COB, because those are appendages of Parliament so that Parliament can run. Because if you talk about budget, that's Parliament's business. If you talk about oversight, that's Parliament's business. They need to strengthen these particular two organs so that Parliament can really be Parliament.
Zainab, we do not have, or we do not need to strengthen anything. We need to put men and women
of integrity
who are bold enough to say no to the president, who are bold enough to say no to the speakers, who are bold enough to talk to the media in front of their offices and say, you know what, this is what they're saying. Look, Kenya is almost 60 years now. 10 years of devolution, 50 years before that, we had Moi and Kibaki and rather Kenyatta Senior. Some of these problems have been there. Okay, Kenyatta talked about inequality, lack of, clean water, literacy in country is still not much in some part of this country. I told you some other time on this show that I've gone to some part in the north where inhabited by the Pokots, they have no school up to today, a whole location of about 500 households. So the problems we are suffering with, it's not about the laws. We have one of the best laws, okay? How, when I read somewhere, when you think because you have a big house and some good amount of money, that material ownership makes you think that you are better than other people, you are a very poor person. This country, the problem we have is greed in public theft. Those cannot be cured by the law. Regardless if you bring which laws, you cannot cover greed by law. You cannot cure or have people who wants to steal, thugs and thieves in offices, and then you want us, we strengthen the law. They will still steal. What we have is a culture of elites that were developed. Look at what Tom Mboya and the Code did that time in 1965, the session paper 10. If you read critically, it was elites from central Kenya and some part of Rift Valley who were in charge of government. And today, we are struggling with their descendants who are still in power. Look at the current cabinet secretaries for Kenya Kwanza. They are worth 15 billion, all of them, and then they are telling us they are hustlers. The issue we have is not the implementation of the law. It is the character and the ideals and the values of a culture that has developed for a very long time in this country. Greed. I said in this forum, on other forums, 83% of this country are Christians. Okay? We read the Bible, we confess to Jesus, we go to church, Muslims go to the mosque. In northern Kenya, we don't have a Christian as a governor. Who is stealing from them? Who are the guys building houses in South Sea? Go to Utawala and Soikamau. It's a culture of greed where people value big cars, big houses. That cannot be cured by the law. So we need to go back to our ethos and say, as a country, especially the people of this citizen, how many people are employed? Not 1 million or maybe 2? How many elected leaders do we have? 1,450 MCAs, less than 400 MPs. The country, we the people of this country, they were, when Raila kept quiet in 2018 to 2022, people were asking, where is Raila? Why should Raila the only one speaking on behalf of this citizen? Where are the Kenyans? You mean Raila is the only one with a brain to think for us? This country needs civic education.
All right.
The Constitution of 2010 has not gone down to the villages. My mom does not know the Constitution. So unless the Kenyan citizen becomes patriotic by being informed of the laws in this country and the rights, but more importantly, on their responsibilities and obligation to this country and to the generations to come. Kenyatta came, he is gone. Moi came, he went. Kibaki left. Kenyatta Senior left. Ruto is going to leave after 10 years. Then what? Are we going to come back? And then when my son is 40 and I'm gone, he's still addressing the questions his father talked about at NTV 40 years ago.
Okay.
It's nonsense.
Very good question there. All right. So before we wind up, because we have very few minutes, just looking at the Star paper here on page 7, one of the biggest issues as well is the issue of the constitution of the IEBC Commission, right? So Azimio leader Raila Odinga is increasingly being outfoxed in his plans to have a say in the recruitment of the next IEBC chiefs. Raila, who has severally demanded that the process of hiring the next commission is halted to allow for inclusivity, suffered a major blow on Tuesday after the IEBC selection panel put out an invitation for chairman and 6 commissioners. This advert now sets the stage for the recruitment process for the men and women who will referee the 2027 election. And of course, we already had the names of the selection panel, which is chaired by Nelson Makanda on Monday, giving Kenyans seeking the job as IEBC chair and commissioners until the 20th of March to submit their application. And also, just yesterday, Raila Odinga also gave President William Ruto, like we saw earlier in the paper, up until Wednesday midnight to either heed to their demands or carry the burden of the consequences of what he will declare on Thursday, which is tomorrow, including the impending mass action. Let's take a look at this report that was filed by our political affairs reporter, Vincent Odwor. We'll come back and wind up this bulletin.
Azimio leader Raila Odinga is sticking to his game plan of taking the mass action route to protest against the current high cost of living in the country and what he has termed as his stolen 2022 presidential victory.
I want you to wait for the time. The deadline is tomorrow, midnight. So you will hear from us on Thursday.
The former premier has dismissed the recent swearing in of the members of the selection panel of new commissioners to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
That is rubbish. Nothing to say about.
Thank you so much. Azimio had rejected the move by the Kenya Kwanza legislators to amend the IEBC Act that altered the composition of the selection panel and accused President Ruto of seeking to capture IEBC for the 2027 election. With only 1 day left, there have been reports which NTV could not independently verify that there have been efforts by President Ruto to have a meeting with former President Uhuru Kenyatta this Thursday, which the former president is said to have flatly refused. Insiders around the former president claim his cousin Captain Kung'u Muigai, who is a close ally of President Ruto, had been sent as an emissary. However, Kung'u has totally denied the claims, insisting he is not aware of such a meeting and nobody had sent him anywhere. Vincent Odur, NTV.
Well, the IEBC recruitment issue is certainly one of the irreducible minimums that he's put forth as part of that ultimatum to the Kenya Kwanza government. As we wind up this conversation, I'll begin with you, Hesbon. We're looking at, you know, sort of a quagmire when it comes to this political process. And of course, it's a big issue because when the electoral, you know, process has been very divisive every election cycle. So one other issue as well is that there has been, you know, some advocating of trying to change how we handle our electoral process, not just have a national election, but sort of decentralize it to the county level. I think that is something that the Azimio leader had sort of hinted at. I don't know. So, but when we're looking at this and we're looking at the issue of the mass action, how do we move forward as a country? And where does that leave the government at this point?
Well, it's a very tricky situation to find ourselves in for a number of reasons. One, you know, the government, the political party that formed the government had a problem during the handshake regime with the constitution of the selection panel that selected the 4 commissioners, you know. So when they were outside government, they were actually looking for a very elaborate and inclusive process. And right now that they're in government, I think they want the process to be as it is. It is no longer disenfranchising because they are the ones who hold the reins of power. And it's very difficult to drive this conversation led by the politicians because what we are seeing is political interest. That the reason why Azimio would want this process, you know, to be opened up, to be a lot more inclusive, is because they are looking at inclusivity as a process that will not give the president a lot of leverage on who becomes a commissioner. Because as it is, the perception outside there is, as it is easy to see the president having, you know, a hand in who becomes the commissioner and even the chair. And that presupposes that the 2027 election is probably predetermined or will have, you know, a pathway that is clear for him. And my take is very simple, that if you were to have these conversations around the election and how to constitute the electoral body, this conversation has to be driven without the political class heavily involved or heavily invested in it. There has to be some voice of the civil society, which unfortunately in this country seems to have been either appropriated to the regime of the day or just gone silent. But there's need to relook at our electoral process. I mean, the drama that we went through, the agony that most Kenyans who had invested heavily in the last election went through, waiting for the tallying of the presidential votes. And at the same time, you know, the gubernatorial votes were going on and the senatorial, is not something that you would wish for a country that has more than 30 years of tradition in multi-party democracy. At least there has to be a way of breaking this tradition of contested elections. And it begins with having a serious constitution of IEBC. I know the president might mean well, you know, in constituting that selection panel, but I think he also needs to be seen to be very neutral in the entire process. And to some extent, he may want to listen more. Not necessarily to the Azimio leadership, but he may want to listen more to what Kenyans are saying. What are Kenyans saying about the electoral process? And I think Kenyans have a lot.
So perceptions really matter at this point.
Perception already outside there does not really favor whatever is going on. It's looking at that process as a process that is creating a path for Kenya Kwanza. And you can actually see that it's not just perception that is based on loose belief, but you can see what they're doing. I mean, the appointment of Senator Malala, who up to recently everyone knew was in ANC, to be the Secretary General of UDA, and then the appropriation of dissenting voices, amalgamation of these political parties, and they're essentially being pressured to form one big political party.
We had yesterday the Ford Kenya leaders saying they will not be pressured into asking the, or folding up into joining UDA. I mean, I identify with those sentiments because if you look at what has been happening in the recent past, two key pillars of multi-party democracy are threatened by this regime. One is the media, and then number two is multi-party democracy. And I think those sentiments are telling you that the president, as the national, the symbol of national unity, should rise beyond, the party politics. All right.
And listen more to Kenyans.
Okay. Yeah. Let's hear from Arnold.
I'll pick up from UDA. I think when we were young, on the day we had a new toy, sometimes we wouldn't sleep, because you want to wake up in the morning and find your toy outside there. Exactly. I don't know what girls would feel like. For us boys, if you had a new toy car, sleep would be difficult to come by. And Malala is that boy. There is a boy in all of us. So Malala is that boy who feels like UDA is his new toy. So he's here giving statements, even declaring himself a CS without portfolio, and saying that he can be there and he will enforce. That is politics, so we can't even begrudge him. He's doing well on that particular front for himself. I'm not so sure if that then works out well for UDA and Kenya Kwanza, because then it's not in President William's interest to start a fight with his partners. When you see those friendly fires and jabs, others calling him a pickpocket, others calling him a makanga, and the others, you don't want those fights in your own house. No parent will really want to see kids actually. Friendly fire also kills. There's nothing like blue on blue. It kills. So I think it's also important that probably the president looks back and tries to organize his house. Okay. He could have IEBC, but if his house is not in order, this is the point that we don't want to talk about. Even as Raila and his teammates actually complain about Ruto trying to capture IEBC, this is the fact that Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta captured IEBC with the Cherera 4. He's just ably said that during that particular time, there was complaint about the selection process. That selection process, by the way, is not the same. The process that brought in the Cherera 4 is not the same with what we are having now. We've gone to Parliament, come up with a new process that Raila does not agree with. All right. So during that particular time,
very quickly, Arnold, we're running out of time.
This is to William Ruto, and I heard him here say that William Ruto will leave after 10 years. It hurts me so much, especially when I want to become president in 2027, and a co-panelist here is saying that I will not be because he thinks somebody else will be. Now, so we don't know even who will be the chairperson in 2027, right? But he already knows that so-and-so will be president. Anyway, for me, I think Raila's biggest problem, and why mass action might actually get a little bit of traction for Raila, is around this IEBC issue. The others, he was a co-president when Unga was 230, he did nothing about it. He had even a subsidy, nothing worked around it. So I think this IEBC issue is one that President William Ruto should be open to engaging some conversation. I know he's moving very fast, but this is the only issue that I feel Raila honestly has got a point on it, because all right. How are you going to pull through this when you actually have been locked out? And Raila is an old politician. He knows these things.
So it will be interesting to see how that works out. Very quickly, Abdullah, we just give you a couple of seconds as we wind up.
I want to tell him that all of us, sometimes we didn't marry the ladies we dated. And sometimes it's good to have dreams, and there is reality. Yeah. Kibaki was there for 10 years. Uhuru was there for 10 years. Why do you think Raila, Uhuru with Ruto, with all the state power right now, is not going to be? What is important is this. I think, first of all, the head of states, or rather the state, is very powerful in Africa, and presidents are also very powerful. In a country where we talked about the individuals occupying the office will, be submissive to the state with all its goodies, I don't think much changing. Ruto will have his way. He will, believe you me. I told you, there are many ways Most of the meetings that we see during the day are not the one that run government. Government is run from golf clubs and swimming pools and bars. The people who make decisions, the ones that have institutes like us here, are maybe employed to implement the decision, but the guys who make those decisions are somewhere else.
All right.
So I think what is important is that I would like also the media to play back the promises.
Okay.
Don't just play us the clips we have seen of the news. We want NTV, Citizen, and all other to play the promises of President Ruto when he was the deputy president, when he wanted to become the president, so that we remind him, this is what you told us.
All right.
Forget about what you're telling us now.
And we always do. If you do watch our news, we're always putting the government into account and keeping track of the promises. But thank you, Abdullahi Alas.
We wanted to respond to Arun Cheria.
I think we'll be having that conversation very soon. Abdullahi Alas, political governance analyst, Hesbon Owila, media and political communications analyst, and Arnold Maliba, public policy analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. I think there's still much more we need to have a discussion around, but we're going to leave it at that. My name is Zainab Ismail. Thank you so much for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. Stay tuned for that. Good morning.